Shri Titanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shivata Parakamanam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Savaitam Savadutam Parajana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Varita Shiva Sakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinam Bandhu Jigatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishnamana Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyavicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Avaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So in accordance with their father's order to beget children, the second group of sons also went to Narayana Saras, the same place where their brothers had previously attained perfection by following the instructions of Narada. Undertaking great vows of austerity, the Savalashvas remained at that holy place. Hare Krishna. So it's been some time since I've read the 6th canto and pastimes of Prajapati Daksha. So it's really mercy on me here that I can return to this. And so from what I understand or remember, it's that Prajapati Daksha, he had given birth to these, was it 1,000 sons, the Haryashvas. And but Narada Muni had come along, the great spiritual master, and he'd spoken to them about the absolute truth, about Krishna. And therefore they'd given up all desires to procreate in the world, which was their father's instruction to them. And rather they took up the brahmachari life of entering into service and devotional service. But Prajapati Daksha, he's not disturbed by this yet. And so he begets 1,000 more children with his wife, Panchajani. And now this time, these sons are known as the Savalashvas. So now we're hearing that the Savalashvas, now they have come to the same holy place that their previous brothers went to, where they heard from Narada Muni, this Narayana Saras. So it's very interesting purport, this one. Just as I was reading, I was catching some of the essence of it. And there's so many things here. The ashram system of first student life, brahmachari, or we can say to be politically correct, brahmacharini ashram as well for the ladies. These ashrams are places which should give individuals all the opportunity to hear about Krishna and to perform devotional service in the temple environment under the protection of the temple and the temple authority. And then at some point in the Vedic culture, when the boys attained about 25 years of age, the guru would speak with them, and they would have probably already decided at that point whether they wished to go now into the household life to find a wife. At the age of 25, they should be mature enough to do that. Of course, the girls are already ready at an earlier age, but at 25 years old, they can decide. So, of course, the majority of boys would go to the household ashram, but some would always remain in the renunciate ashram in the temple environment. And then when we get a bit older, after many years of service, either a brahmachari or a grihastha, we can enter the more renounced order of life, the Vanaprastha and Sannyas. So this is the Krishna's system of ashram. Here it's very interesting that Srila Prabhupada is saying what's the duty of the father in all this? The father and the mother of this child who's becoming like a brahmachari. Their duty was previously, and it was to nurture that child in a protective environment and to imbue them with some intelligence which can grow through protection and love for the child, so that it's in a good position to take up this spiritual life, to enter the ashram. But we can see in today's world that this is not the case, of course. And so most fathers are rather irresponsible in this age, the age of darkness and quarrel and hypocrisy and a short term of life and all sorts of problems along the way. So the fathers themselves are not qualified to be fathers, actually. But because it's a cat and dog society, then many become fathers. So this is the problem that we face in Kali Yuga. But the Lord, understanding this, of course, he's very merciful. So he sent his devotees to inform us about how we can follow this process, even in this darkest of all ages. That this spiritual wisdom. So Mahaprabhu came, and he's given, as Krishna, he's given the instructions how to follow. So we can see that already how this can change, how we can move from cat and dog society to a spiritual society. When the young men they go through the ashram, some will take up this household life, produce children, and then they're already in a better position to identify the value of that child and to nurture them in a proper way, because they're devotees of Krishna, because Krishna is now in the center, and so everything can work perfectly. Whereas in the Kali Yuga society, for most men, it's like they're seeking the center, but they don't know where it is. They're trying to find it any old way. So even when they get into 50-year-old plus, they're still seeking the center and they haven't found. So this is the great importance of how we must give this knowledge any way we can and everywhere we can, because this is proper dharma. So in the beginning of Bhagavatam, when the sages at Naimisharanya, they're asking Sutta Goswami, what is the best thing for this age, this upcoming Kali Yuga? What is going to be the best thing? Sutta Goswami is Savai Pumsa Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktira Dokshije Ahitiki Aparatihata Yatma Superacidity. So the supreme dharma of this age is where men can attain to pure devotional service of the transcendent Lord. It must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So this is what we're all seeking. This is what the soul is seeking. This uninterrupted blessing of the knowledge of Krishna and the philosophy of understanding the difference between the material and spiritual worlds. And it becomes unmotivated. We don't need to push for it. We don't need to have money to buy it. It's just offered by the mercy. Krishna offers it through his mercy, through his devotees. So it's an unmotivated and uninterrupted approach, and therefore we become satisfied with this devotional service. This is what everybody is seeking, the whole human society. But of course, they're looking in the wrong place. They're looking for money, and they're looking for wealth, and they're looking for power, and they're not finding what they're after. So even the most wealthy people on this planet, they're still not satisfied. They're miserable as anything, most of them. But they can't stop because it's this desire to find. So everyone's looking for Krishna, but only some are finding. And part of the reason is because we're in Kali. So this this knowledge is, it has been redundant or misunderstood. But through the line of the Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada, it's all been given to us. Like, it's all in the books. It's everywhere. But yet, it's still not prevalent amongst human society, obviously. So then, so now I thought, like, at one point it was going to be 26, and I was looking there. It's like, it talks like about the difference between the Vedic approach and the modern approach. And I was thinking, like, so in the Vedic approach, you had the Bhagavat Dharma. So you were born into a family. Your parents were already naturally devotees, so you just naturally took it up because that's what everybody did in the Vedic culture. So from childhood, you're immediately taking up this consciousness, this state of consciousness. So there's no real need for like initiations and like this. It just happens. But in Kali Yuga, of course, we're so separate from that. The Vedic culture has crumbled to ashes a long time ago. But yet, and then so Narada Muni himself, who we're speaking about here, Narada, the great culprit in this little Leela, he's the one who gave this other process, the Pancharatrika Dharma. So, but therefore we get, there's guru, there's initiation, and there's this process, because we need a process to follow. So everyone needs a process. So this is the great mercy of Narada Muni, that we find ourselves, even in the Kali Yuga, we can take up this process and follow it, because it's ultimately it's perfect and complete, because Krishna is perfect and complete. So everything that comes is perfect and complete, but we have to recognize that, of course, and see it in it. So we also find early in Bhagavatam, on this question, when these sages are saying, like, how can we understand, like, we're moving into this, Krishna has departed, and now we know that this Kali Yuga is really going to come big time. So they had this yagya that was going to last 1,000 years in Naimisharanya, and Sutta Goswami is there, and how can we understand all this? So then Sutta Goswami also says this important shloka, Vedanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabjade. So the learned transcendentalists who understand this truth, understand this non-dual substance as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the non-dual substance, which means the transcendental subject, not the duality of the material world, but the transcendental spiritual nature which is underlying everything. So this process, and through Narada Muni's mercy, that we bring ourselves into this, where we begin to see past duality. There has to be something else, right? Which everybody's saying. Well, we find that there is, by taking up the practice, and we're kind of like ushered into this non-dual nature. And then, we hear about, and we start to meditate on the beauty of Krishna and his pastimes, his personality, his associates, and we're chanting his holy name and associating with other devotees, taking prasadam. All of this is allowing us to enter into this non-dual thing. But then it's like this, the three stages, the Brahman, the Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And actually, if you don't mind, I'd actually read that purport, because I think it's so important. I just saw it quickly this morning. It kind of explains a lot, and it ties in with this, purpose. We can see where we're going. So yeah, learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Bhagavan. Absolute truth is both subject and object, and there is no qualitative difference there. For Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun God. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. So we can see that, especially in Kali Yuga, there's so much argument because seekers are understanding from different perspectives. The religionists are really set in their very restricted understanding, but they will curse anyone who says anything different. And then you have more like yogis, like the whole kind of new age thing is running on the back of those who have probably been yogis in previous lives, so they're seeking and they're closing in, but it's more this kind of like impersonal viewpoint. But then we find the Vaishnavas, the devotees, and it's just unalloyed devotion for Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So it's full blown and complete at that stage. So it's described like Srila Prabhupada's this analogy of like the sun, the Brahman being like the sun's rays. So it's like the rays of the sun. We can feel it and we can detect that it's there. Then Paramatma is like the sun globe. You can feel there's something more. There's some connection directly with myself, with ourself. And then Bhagavan is like the personality of the sun, the full-blown personality. Or it's like, I remember one walk I used to do when I lived in Edinburgh at one time. There's a place called the Hermitage. It's a big wood, like ancient beech trees. So you walk out of this hermitage and you see like Edinburgh way in the distance, but you can only see it, but you can't yet hear anything from it or see anything that's happening within it. It's just there. And as you walk, if you walk all the way into, gradually as you enter closer, you start to hear like the voice. There's people there. There's something going on. There's movement. There's other entities there. This is like Paramatma. And then once you're inside, it's just full blown. Everything's going on, like all sorts of pastimes going on in there. So that's another kind of analogy how we can understand this. So but all three are bona fide ways of understanding the supreme truth. But obviously, the Bhagavan realization is the one that is going to serve us the best. So you also have this example of the Kumaras, the four Kumaras, when they were, they remained eternally small children because they didn't like the Haryasvas and also these Savalasvas, who are about the same thing is going to happen with them, that they're going to renounce the instructions of the Prajapati, their father, Daksha. Prajapati is to fill the universe with progeny, to bring the souls into the world. But some come into the world and they don't want anything to do with that. So we have the example of the four Kumaras. So they entered into the world from the lotus stem of Lord of Daksha Vishnu, behind Lord Brahma. But they immediately, they didn't want to be a part of that. And so they remained as small little child bodies so that they wouldn't be tempted by the material nature of, that, that kind of lustful desire to procreate and all of this. So they remained that way. But we find that example when they were. Oh, there's a great sloka. It was when I used to be in ashram in the manor, back to manor, when I do the pujari service, you take the tulsi from the tulsi greenhouse, take her from the temple room to the tulsi house, and bring her from the tulsi house to the temple. I was remembering summer days. She's so fragrant, Tulsi Marani. The fragrance coming from Tulsi is so strong. But I'd walk and I used to chant this shloka all the time that the four Kumaras chanted. It's this Tasya Ravinda Nayanasya Padaravinda Kinjoka Mushra Kinjaka Mishra Tulasi Makaranda Vayu Antargatasa Vivarena Chakarate Sham Sankshoba Makshara Chisama Pichita Tanvo. When the breeze is carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves and saffron from the lotus feet of the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, entered through the nostrils of those sages into their hearts, they experienced a change both in body and mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal understanding. So I used to chant this every time I was carrying tulsi. And it was very, just the aroma of tulsi is so intoxicating, in the sun when she's warm. So that's an interesting sloka because they were, as it says, they were very much involved in the impersonal understanding, the Brahman understanding, the awareness side. So all the practices of that. And but as soon as they got the scent of the tulsi leaves and saffron from Lord Vishnu, then immediately they changed. Their mind changed and their body changed because they took on a spiritual body by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. By the mercy, we get bhakti, and we get the spiritual body when he decides that we're ready. So the example also of Narada Muni, we hear about him. He surrendered his body and he was awarded a spiritual form. So that's the whole process. We're waiting for that to happen. That's our best moment, isn't it? It's like when we get that mercy to be given a spiritual body so that we can take part in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord eternally in the spiritual realm, rather than coming back here again in the cycle of samsara to suffer more and more. So this is it. So this is the whole kind of like thing behind it. So here we have again Prajapati Daksha, because he's a great Prajapati, very mighty Daksha, and he's very keen that his sons take up this role of procreation within the universe. But his first 1,000 sons have already gone to Narada and become brahmachari and renounced that opportunity. So now 1,000 more sons, and we're going to hear what happens with them. So you can see the whole purpose is that we're here in these. We have this, like, we are in essence spiritual parts of light, parts and parcels of Krishna, but because of this covering, we need this covering to be in this material world. So we're in here. So it doesn't really matter how we got here so much. It matters that we can grasp the importance that we should be keen to leave it behind, just pass through. Just many, I think, in the Christian world, they say you only live once. Like you just go through once, and that's it. So we don't know really the details completely about that, but we can understand that that's the essence of it is. But we need to work at it. We need to make some endeavor. That's the thing. It's not just going to happen. We're not just going to be offered it on a plate. We need to make the endeavor. So we're taking the endeavor, but it's the most beautiful endeavor, to take up this practice of chanting and reading about Krishna and speaking about Krishna amongst ourselves. So in that way we're purifying ourselves already. It's said that already when we take up this practice, the demigods, they're already aware of us. So that's the first step, that once the demigods are aware of us, so they know that we're endeavoring. They know that we want to attain to Krishna's service eternally. And so that's fine. But you can see that in the material world, it's not so easy. The demigods can be quite harsh at times. So we're very fortunate that through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas, that we've been given this opportunity. So does anybody have any points in this or thoughts about it, this kind of subject matter? Excellent.
Thank you very much for. I'm just wondering, with this idea of procreating and sort of putting population into the universe, because we hear, I think Prabhupada says, sex life, the attraction between male and female is the backdrop of the material world. It seems, the early cantos in Bhagavatam are describing a lot of difficulty in this act of providing population for the universe. And we see now doesn't seem to be such a problem amongst the human race. No. Why is there such difficulty in the initial stages?
That's a great question. Yeah, I could attempt to say something about that. It's because this is coming into this material world. It's an unnatural situation for the soul, for the spirit soul. So it's it's to adapt to that, particularly in the earlier parts of a creation cycle, where everything is still very kind of pure and new. Then there's all these processes involved in that adjustment, and so therefore we hear that there's a lot involved. Whereas you fast forward to where we are now, halfway through, just past halfway through this current creation in time. It's the chewing the chewed. We've been through it so much, over trillions of years already. It's it's just cats and dogs now. It's everybody, everybody knows how to do it. It's not because the tendency is just to do it because it's the animals, they know perfectly how to do it. They don't need to learn how to procreate. They just naturally do. But in the human form of life, obviously, things are different. But if we're so close to the animal form of life, then it's not so difficult. This is my kind of thought on this. But in the earlier stages, where you have this whole mechanism of, because it is unnatural for the spirit soul to be in the material world, and so in the earlier parts, these whole processes involved in this, and how much respect there was for everything and for everyone else. It's a whole big culture thing going on. But now it's just cats and dogs, so it's is that kind of, I don't know, has anyone else got some thoughts about that? Or does that kind of answer your some of it? Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. A question, Prabhu. So we understand now Vedic culture is very much on the decline. So someone practicing Krishna consciousness, is it necessary someone in a female body or a male body to join ashram like Grasta or Vanaprastha and Sannyas? Can someone stay brahmacharini forever, say? or someone live as a...
Yes, I think it's very feasible that because this whole dynamic has been set up where this is a possibility. So again, by the mercy of the acharyas like Srila Prabhupada, it's become a possibility in the world. So it should be that all children who are born in this world have the opportunity for ashram life. And of course it has been that in Vedic culture, but now it's not. So now it's world of cats and dogs. You just get thrown in, and good luck. Like may the best man or woman win, because that's what it's become. But we knowing now and seeing the results of what an intelligent child is, when we see that. I mean, not just we see like some devotee children, incredibly intelligent. And you see, and also outside the devotee world, children who have just been given or had a better opportunity with, loving parents and good education, their intelligence really shines through and they're capable of so much. But of course, I always remember, like, so back to Vijayapurnama, I was saying, it's like, just think, it's like, you might be, like, so we're all like, first generation devotees in the sense that we've just come into it. Our parents were not devotees, although some of you parents might have been devotees, but but they might have had, of course, they might have had some piety. They were possibly religious, whatever. So that's there as well. But pretty much like first generation, and then the second. So your parents are devotees, but they might just be, they've been struggling, because it's not been easy. You see in the movement, like those, for devotees trying to raise children at this point is quite tough, obviously. I haven't done that, but then third generation, suddenly, not only your parents are devotees, but your grandparents are devotees as well. And then fourth, fifth, sixth, you see how it happens, like when all your parents, grandparents, the whole extended family, they're all devotees to some extent. Everybody's practicing, everybody's chanting, reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, discoursing, like living mode of goodness life. You see the difference there. And so the natural intelligence is going to really shine through on that child who's nurtured in that environment. So we might think, well, God, it's so tough, like, how's it ever going to work? Because some devotees have been, through so much to try and get this far, like to get through. But you understand that it's not always like this. It's been like early stages. It's like the early pioneers have come through, and many of them have left already. Like Tribhuvana, Prabhu, so many, like, that they've come and gone. And but what have they left in their wake? They've left inspiration. They've left, like, inspiration. They've increased our faith. And now the devotees who have tried to bring up the children in the movement, but they've struggled, and they've found that many of the children, they just don't want it. They'll just get up and walk away from it. And then they feel like, how could I have failed so badly? But it's not. It's always a perspective. We always look at the bigger picture. That it's just like a stage in the whole thing. It's not about us. It's about all of us, because the spirit soul is transcendent to all of this. But we just need to realize that. So it's like if we're focused on the me all the time, then that's an illusory aspect. It's not going to help. So we need to be able to surrender, but that surrender comes through that intelligence, which comes through the bhakti and the devotion. So it has to be that all children, to some extent, get some form of ashram training instead of school, like cats and dogs schooling. And then we can either, if, like in the old system from about early 20s, if the boy feels like he really wants to just remain in the ashram with the guru and preaching, and has no real interest in married life and procreation, then he should be given all facility to do that, and he should be protected in the ashram system to do that. But then for the grihastas, the householders, they should also have to be protected. The women have to be protected. The children have to be protected. There have to be proper systems in place, and places where devotees can live together, and proper schools for the children. So everybody is included. And then later on in life, vanaprastha or sannyas, then they're also protected. That they can leave this world in a protective situation and not just have to be thrown into some hospital somewhere to die alone, which is quite a scary thought. So yeah, very much it's there. So even though it's a Kali Yuga, it's not the Vedic culture, but yet the essence of that Vedic culture is with us, because that's the mercy is contained there. So we can use this in this world, even in this Kali Yuga world, and make this gradually form it. So that's the way I see it. Hare Krishna. Anyone else like to? So what time does the class go till? It's past now. Does anyone have some thought about this or a question?
Yeah, I have a slightly different one, not somewhat related. I was speaking about the culture of, going to some training before you enter your next stage of life. And despite of the trouble that, some sons, remain brahmacharis, he was still, the culture was that you had to do it, and he didn't think twice to send, his sons to, to get that education. And as you mentioned, this thing and things related to that is not a part of the culture now. And even devotee families, I know some devotee families, the children are now no more children, they're becoming 17, 18 years old, and really becoming interested in Krishna consciousness, like getting really fired up. And you can see that, and is about to enter university as well. So you can see on people's faces, serious devotees, they're freaking out actually that they may join the temple, but they are very ecstatic that they're going to university, but they at the same time simultaneously extremely freaking out that a person may join the ashram.
Yeah,
it's like how to make that shift, that understand the value of that education, even at the risk that, a rare soul, may remain in an ashram, and seeing that even that is a great fortune for the parents, rather than they thinking, oh my God, this life is spoiled because the person there's some chance to become a lifetime renunciate or something.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like because it's frustrating, someone, a young devotee child or young person goes to the university, and it's all this mundane knowledge, taught by, non-devotees, and it's kind of not. It might be. There's aspects to it which will be kind of interesting here and there, but it's not satisfying, really. And anyway, the destination is usually not so wonderful that you can go through a whole university education and end up just doing some really mundane kind of thing, one job. But I think something maybe that's there is that like the more like like in Innisrath, we were in Ireland, so we'd just been there until a few months ago. And then you can see like the young devotee children, either they're just kind of half wild because the parents were devotees, and then but they didn't take it up, or they weren't maybe inspired enough to take it up. So they become just rather kind of like quite wild, but you can see the potential is there. And actually what seems to happen is that as they go into more teenage years, that they have that in the background still. So even though, and then it starts to come out, and then they want to go there. And because there are numbers of them together, then together they form that kind of like, okay, let's do it. It's quite cool to be a devotee, it's cool to go out and Harinam and all the rest of it. So like in numbers, they can like bring each other in. But yeah, for someone who wants to, at that age, in the early teenage years, to enter an ashram, obviously it's a huge thing. So it's like, is the society ready for that? So maybe it's like early stages as well. And then it's not actually in place yet, because the society is hard. It's hard to manage what there is, but to have that kind of management is not really ready for that yet. But yet it's a vision. It's there somewhere in front of us. That is a possibility to create that kind of like security and structure where you can have that kind of thing, where like a 16-year-old can enter in an ashram. It's like a special thing. It's not to be just because the problems in the early years of the movement, where the people who were the devotees who were sent to oversee that were not qualified to be in that position, so therefore it didn't work, and there were all these problems. So you need, absolutely, it's essential that the teachers and the supervisors in those ashrams are absolutely qualified and dedicated to that work. And it can't really happen until that starts to take place. But that would be the breakthrough, at that point, where it becomes like very much a structure. You don't want to call it institutional, because that just sounds weird. But it has to be there, and there has to be a lot of devotion, and there have to be a lot of devotees involved, and of course the parents have to be involved, and the renunciates, the gurus have to be qualified and sincere, and they're well-wishers and all of that. And then amazing things can happen.
So it's interesting that, brahmachari training, or brahmacharini, more modern day, but speaking about the traditional one, it was also a training for profession as well. So after you completed your brahmacharya years, you're also at the same time ready for profession. If you choose to get married, you don't have to do it separately. It was integrated. So I guess, in one sense, it is a valid headache of a parents, because, they're looking at that side as well. If one just goes that side and neglects the other side, and if it's not lifetime renunciate, when, comes out of the ashram, it can be really tough to start your kind of life, in terms of looking after the family, for example. So it's like, Prabhupada did envision like varnashram colleges, and that kind of thing. So things could be potentially integrated, but until that time, maybe we have to kind of strike the balance between, how to achieve that people, they get some education that will, provide their bread, and also do brahmacharya training, how to achieve these two things. It may have to be in the two separate places.
Okay, but I thought it comes from that is that right. So we know that, say, the Gurukulis, they go through the Gurukul, then at some point they want to leave and get married and all the rest of it. And then you think, well, what am I going to do? I could be a temple priest, or I could be like a martial arts teacher or something. But there are not so many possibilities. But just when you were speaking there, I thought, because like I did this education in Denmark years ago. It was like a degree in education, but it was an alternative school. So what it was, that you'd have like certain months, that you'd have a few months doing one thing, a few months making money, a few months teaching, practicing school, a few months studying for the exams, the national, Danish ministry exams, but only 3 months or something doing that, and then you're off again. You're teaching, you're working, you're building, traveling in the world, and so I see from that what's possible to do is that you have within the ashram training, you have like material studies, but you don't need to spend so much time. Like in this schooling system now, you spend years like, God, it's like endless. Oh no, but it's so slow, and it's like, it's deliberately like drawn out. It's just useless education system. And once you learn it at the end, very little. But what you can do is you could put intense study time into learning one thing. Say you, because you're looking at the qualities of the child. So say like you can see like one boy, he's interested in, say, engineering. Like you see he's interested in structures, and he's got a mathematical mind, So then what you do is you take a training just for him, like that one individual, and then you start giving him the engineering training, but he doesn't spend years doing it. He spends like months doing it. It's like intense. Become qualified for the exams. You know what the exams are going to involve. You know what level he has to be at to pass these exams. You put him through the exams. He's still in the ashram. He's like, then at some point he's a qualified engineer, but he didn't have to spend years in some university or something. So this is potential. It's the potential within all children, but because we've all been, I speak for myself, like messed up, like one way or another, we've like totally wasted a lot of time when we're younger, and we didn't know because we thought, oh, it's great, but we didn't see that was actually going on, was that children have immense potential for learning. So if you start young and you identify what it is, what their kind of dharma, what their kind of thing is, you identify it when they're young, and then you point them in that direction. And so you give them like a standard material education while they're having a spiritual education. And then they can come out of that, they're qualified, they're even more qualified than everyone else, because when they go to someone to work with, hopefully, ultimately, there's a devotee engineer out there, and you say, this boy, he's very clever, he knows the principles of engineering, and he wants to learn more, so would you take him? And this devotee engineer says, yes, I'd rather have this devotee child than some like cats and dogs, like guy who's been at university. You know what I mean? And that's how it works. So then financially, that boy is now, he can get married and bring up a family because he's got it in place. So for the boys who want to focus more on renunciation and preaching, they don't need to bother about that material learning because there's no need. What's the need of it? Because we've got the highest understanding is in the Shastra and Guru, and become the preachers and the leaders of the spiritual societies. So in that way, it can really work. So Varnashram, Krishna's science. Varnashram is, it works, obviously, if we apply it, but we're only now beginning to realize what it actually involves and what it can be. So that's just my thought and my own experience, that you can actually do very intensive learning. I know in India, they have like amazing systems for children for learning mathematics and things like that. Do you know, Prabhu, about that? It's like I think in south of India, they learn very, very fast about like manipulating numbers, very, very quick, to a level that in Western universities, you'd be doing a PhD and learning some of this stuff. But these are kids of like 6-7 years old, and they've already mastered numbers. So like that's part of that Vedic culture as well. It's like children can learn extremely fast. Like, it's just that the society has not noticed that, or it's deliberately not looking at it. It just wants to produce people who can be in the economy to serve like the people who are making loads of money at the top, basically. Is what's going on. But now it's the time again to shift up into this higher consciousness, as we're approaching the golden age. And so I can see that you can have material education within the ashram, spiritual ashrams, but you can do it in just short bursts of time, and you can, so then you can find, like, because in the ancient system, the gurus would look at the qualities of the children, and they'd see the qualities in them, and then they'd nurture them according to that. So that's how it worked.
When you stay in an ashram, it's not you're studying all day. There's something that you do some service. So technically, that as a part of that, you undergo a certain education and training in terms of skills and etc. So if you're like a more focused on recognizing somebody's dharma, then that can become part of that.
It requires quite a few devotees, and so it's something that we're moving towards. But we have to endeavor, and we can only start here, right? But all glories to all the devotees Karuna Bhavan, like the Sankirtan devotees of Karuna Bhavan is famous. Like what they managed to do was just like extraordinary, really. But that was like pioneering. It's like to go out there in that mood of service, like, and just do it. Like, who can do that? So, but that's not something that, obviously, it's not something that would go on forever. It was like a period of time where that was what that mercy allowed to happen. But now, now we're moving into other dynamics, So we'll stop there. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
His Grace Rabindra Prabhu ki
Jai.